Divorce happens. In fact, it happens to almost 50% of first marriages. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Divorce Happens, a podcast to educate, inspire, support, and yes, make you laugh through divorce and beyond so that you can start fresh on the next phase of your journey. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh.
You'll get divorced. You'll get divorced.
Getting divorced?
I'm getting a divorce.
You're getting a divorce.
Because she's getting a divorce.
So what if I get divorced?
Welcome back to Divorce Happens, the podcast where we support you before, during, and after divorce with education, inspiration, and a little bit of laughter. Because as you know, divorce happens and then you start fresh. And I'm so excited about our guest today. She's one of our fresh starts experts, which we love, but she also is somebody that changed the trajectory of my life and my career. And she is one of the wisest people I know when it comes to parenting and children. So we have Joanna Hulton here. Joanna, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Well, thank you so much for your vote of confidence.
Yeah.
And I've known you a really long time.
Long time.
I'm so thrilled to be here. I've been working with families in this community for over 40 years, and I'm extremely interested in how healthy development occurs. And I think for me, I became most interested in understanding how trauma and tragedy and loss can influence children's development. And especially after 9/11, that's when I became really interested in. I did more research and trying really hard to understand how can we help kids through times that it just happens. And it was, and we had to be there to help the families and the kids. So that's when I first became really involved with understanding how loss influences development. And of course, divorce is a loss. And so that's where we can start today.
Absolutely. And I think you make such a great point where every family is going to have some sort of loss, right? Whether it's the death of a pet or a grandparent or an infant or a divorce, right? Whatever it is. And we are not equipped. This is not in the baby books, right? Of like how to talk to your 5-year-old about these life transitions. So we have to turn to experts like you. So, Joanna, I talk to women, specifically women, but men too, going through divorce every day, literally every day. The number one question I get is, how can I support my children during this transition? And I think, you and I have had a lot of conversations about this, and divorce is really confusing for kids. There's a lot of changes. And I know in my own experience, my younger son was just 3 when his dad moved out. And he's almost 9 now, so many years later, and he's just understanding what happened at this point. So what can we do, Joanna, from this perspective of like, we're going through this trauma, we're trying to heal, but we have thrown a complete we've not blown up because that's not it's a good thing, but you know, like our life is just in transition with our children, and it's really confusing. How can we support them during this transitional time?
Okay, this is a really important question. And so that the best thing we can do is to understand that there are developmental milestones that occur in the first 5 years of life for the first time. And those milestones really continue throughout our lifespan. And so the initial things that children go through in the first 5 years are going to repeat themselves over the life. And so to understand what developmental stage your child is at when you get divorced is going to be really important, because just the way parents are doing a lot of work and separating and moving on in their lives, children are doing work at the same time. And so that we have to understand, what kind of work is your child doing? For example, at 3 years old. 3 years old is a time when the hard issues like breaking away from family and um, understanding, what it means to be leaving home and going to preschool and all of those things. And they become really, really, um, they do become very interested in family, what we call the family romance, right? And that is,
Mhm.
w- I'm taking initiative because that's what I do. I'm 3 and I need to take initiative. So one way a 3-year-old might take initiative would be to try to get mommy, because it's a young man, mommy all for myself or daddy. It really depends. Things are changing.
Mhm.
But point is, if there's a triangle, and the first triangle is usually a mom and a dad. And so the child will definitely want to use that triangle to take initiative, to say, I can have this all for myself. So the one thing we have to remember, this is just one little example, is that if we split up at a time when our child is trying to take initiative in that way, something is going to be influenced and they might feel worried that,
Mhm.
oh boy, I got mommy or I got daddy all to myself. And so we just have to keep that in mind. And so that when we talk to them about our partners, it's going to be very important, to make sure they know that no, it was nobody's fault. You didn't do anything to get daddy to leave, for instance.
Yep.
And I've worked with families where the children are left feeling like, oh boy, and sometimes we call that like an Oedipal victory.
Mm.
Like, boy, I wanted to get her all for myself, and I've got her. And that ushers in a lot of fear,
Right.
a lot of guilt, a lot of worry. And so
Mm.
then that would interfere with the stages of grief that we all go through when we're trying to manage loss. And so it's going to be important to understand the stages of grief and how it intersects with the developmental needs of your child at that time. I hope that's a lot. So,
Well, but it's so I love the way you said that, but also I'm thinking of like me going through my divorce and then hearing somebody say, just intersect your child's development with the stages of grief. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. So
yeah.
what's an easy way that we can, like really, I love what you said about really consider the developmental stage of your child. I think that is something I've really never heard an expert say before. And I think we have a lot of experts, quote unquote, not us, but in the world, who will say, just tell them it's not their fault, or just tell them that we both love them. Okay, but like, does a 3-year-old even know what fault is? Right? Like things like that, right? So I love that you said that. No, so how can parents discover, right, these developmental stages and grief and the intersection?
Well, I do believe that we can teach parents these psychological concepts very easily. And every human should know about child development because child development is really human development.
Mm,
And so we really, I think it's really important for us to learn these things, and they're not really hard to learn. Over the years, I have done workshops for parents and teachers. I've taught at colleges and then given, lectures about human development. And it's really amazing how so many people are interested in it after they hear it for the first time. It's like, wow, I didn't know that was happening.
right.
Oh, we can't do it all today. I mean, if you
Yeah.
invite back, we could talk about, we could talk about this. And
Are there good books? Like, are there resources for parents?
one resource would be my book,
Yep,
Parent Fatigue Syndrome.
one of my
And
favorites.
yes, and there are other books like The Magic Years by Selma Freyberg, which
Mhm.
is such a classic. And it's an older book and it's just mm, fabulous. It really it will help a lot to understand the developmental stages in the magic years of life.
Yeah, yeah. I have a question for you because I could see how parents would be listening to this and think like, I don't have the time or energy to discover all of this. So, what would it look like to work with somebody like you, right? Locally in your area or even virtually, right? What are the benefits of kind of bringing in outside help to help your family during this transition?
If you feel like you don't have the time, and then once you do have a session or two, then you realize, wow, I don't have the time not to do it, because it makes
Right.
all difference.
Right.
You know, parents have told me that after one session, they go home and they start thinking about it and looking at it differently, and the results that they get are tremendous and happen very quickly.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, we literally aren't taught child development, and yet we're allowed to take a child home from the hospital. So,
It's so important, and we are out here, and those of us who do this work would love to share it more.
mhm.
It's my intention to make this more available. That's why I'm here doing this podcast today. It's not my favorite thing in the world to be,
You're doing
and
great. You're
but
doing great.
it's all good. It's all good. So, yeah, it's really important, and again, it's not really hard to receive this information in a short amount of time.
Right, right, and I think you're right. Once you start to see it through that lens, you can't really go backwards. You
Really
just see
can't.
everything. Yeah.
Oh, like, wow. Like, for instance, I'm just looking at my little chart here because I have a chart of, developmental milestones that I've used over the years when I teach, and if you look at all the things that kids are working on in the first 5 years, and if you are very distracted because you're trying to manage what's going on in your life and all the changes, it's easy to make a mistake, to be accidentally, okay, well, my child is acting this way.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know what to do about it. And I'm feeling so frazzled myself.
Right,
And so that just knowing that, oh, you know what? At your child's age, they are really working on autonomy, right?
right,
You need to say yes to the word no,
right.
right? And when you are not feeling up for it, it's going to become harder and harder to understand that, it's simple as giving kids choices, but you feel like you don't have the time, and I'm managing everything, and I'm hurting because the
Mhm.
worst happens and it hurts.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And so then when your child who is going through a stage of autonomy, like, I need to know I have power and I have control, and you're thinking, "But I don't have power and control right now. How am I gonna give it to my child?"
Right, right.
Just knowing that, "Oh, stage of autonomy. Okay." And then you clear space in your mind. Like, "Okay, this not about
Mm,
me now.
mm,
This is about her or
right,
him,
right.
and if I can do little things to make them
Mhm.
powerful, in control."
Yep.
And remember, they might be feeling guilty about taking the parent away from the other,
Mm.
and they don't talk about that.
No,
They
right,
get, "Oh, by the way, mom, I've been thinking,
right.
actually feel pretty guilty and ashamed of myself because all those times when, dad would look at you and roll his eyes and say, 'Oh, that kid of yours?'"
Right, right.
And that is really hard for a kid to deal with because
Yeah,
you don't talk about it that way.
right, they don't
They
know how, yeah.
act out.
Right, 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 right.
A lot of acting out, and so then when children are acting out, usually parents will come in and talk with me, and I say, "We're looking for the answers in the wrong places.
Mm,
They're acting out because they're not talking it out. We must be able to give them the words to use to express their feelings, or else they're little kids, they don't know, so they just act out as if they were in a play. Um, yeah, so there are a lot of really, um, good ways to talk about this, and I'd love the opportunity,
yeah,
if we get some people with specific questions,
yeah,
giving me the age of the child,
love that, yeah.
I'd really be able to, flesh this out more.
I love that. We'll definitely have you come back because this is the top topic that I definitely get questions on. Um, so you also have this beautiful initiative that you've been working on. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, the Children's Peace Initiative is an online forum. It is, I developed it several years ago, and when you go into the website, you will hear the story about how I did that. I have a team now that I'm working with, and everybody on the team is involved with either education, social work, counseling, and we continue to put together lots of information that parents and teachers and kids. I have a new kids section that
Mhm.
we just developed. We want to hear from the kids. We want to hear what's on their mind. And there are so many wonderful things and so many resources, books, videos. And so I would invite everybody to take a look and then let me know what you want to hear more of. What are your questions?
Mm,
That's what this is all. That's what the
I
Children's
love
Peace
that.
Initiative is all about.
Yep.
The idea that if we raise peaceful children,
Mhm.
we're going to have a more peaceful world.
What a theory, right? Yeah.
And we are needed now more than ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Parents needed, teachers, parents. We are needed to
Yep.
help these kids manage
Yeah.
everything they're hearing.
Yeah. I love
Does
that
that,
so much. Yeah.
does that
So
make sense?
important. So yes, and absolutely so important right now, in this dialogue.
And I think before you were asking me about, is there one tip
Yep.
that can be so very important? And over all the years that I've worked with families, to understand that all kids are part mommy and part daddy, whether we like it or not. They just are. And so that when we divorce, it's very tempting to not want to allow the part daddy or the part mommy into the room because that person hurt us. But I've seen this, it's very common for children then to suppress parts of the self. Oh, I can't bring part mommy into the relationship with
Right.
daddy.
Right.
So they squelch part of their authentic selves,
Mm,
and it can cause lots of problems with when you're in school, with friends, as you grow older in your own relationships,
yeah.
because you feel like you have to hide a part of yourself.
That's a whole other episode. We're gonna have you come back on. That is fascinating, also from my perspective as a child of divorce.
Yeah.
So that's really fascinating. Joanna, before we let you go, if somebody's listening to this going through a divorce, which they probably are, what would be some words of encouragement that you could leave them with today?
That you can get through this in a really successful and productive way with the right amount of information, that you will come out smarter than when you began, and that you can move on with your life in a more evolved way. And that's the hope. I mean, we have different partners in life and, so-called soulmates. Our soulmates are people that we learn from, right?
Mhm.
And every experience can be a valuable one. If you can look at it that way, you're doing yourself a favor and you're doing your children a favor. And then it can be very successful.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much, Joanna. All of your info will be in the show notes with the
Okay.
Children's Peace Initiative and your books. And you just are so wise. I could literally talk to you for hours and hours about this. So if
I would love
anybody has questions, we will have you back. We will have you back. And if you have questions, please email us, reach out, and we will have Joanna back to keep this conversation going. Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you, Olivia.
Divorce Happens is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the only divorce registry platform for everything you need to begin again, including home items, hype team, and everything in between. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh. We're here to support you before, during, and after divorce. Head to freshstartsregistry.com for more info.